everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the Cinematropolis.com. I'm your host, the editor-in-chief and film critic at the Cinematropolis, Caleb Masters, and this month we'll continue July's Cinematropolis theme of time travel, celebrating the Indiegogo for Planet Thunder Productions' new film, Shifter. In today's episode, we'll start with the first entry of our audio diary documenting the fundraising and casting process for Shifter.
After you have a script and you've got all that stuff going and you kind of know what film or project you're wanting to do, then the next big question is, okay, how do we fund it?
Later, Alexandra Bohannon will delve into film scores from movies that feature time travel.
It's looking at your limitations is another form of strength and having you get more creative, because, I mean, I can't imagine Donnie Darko having differenter music.
In closing out the show, Laron Chapman and I will do a review of Boots Riley's directorial debut, Sorry to Bother You.
Sorry to Bother You is probably the most unique of the bunch in that it has a very surrealistic, kind of cerebral take on some pretty dark themes.
It's all coming at you next. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, the editor-in-chief of the Cinematropolis. We are kicking off this segment. This will be the first segment of our Shifter Making of Cinematic Schematic segment.
Ooh.
So for those of you who don't know, Shifter is a time travel body horror that is being made by our parent company, Planet Thunder Productions.
Ooh.
There are no ghosts, I assure you. There are no ghosts in this movie. They are working on a film called Shifter. We wanted to take our listeners, give you a chance to go behind the scenes to get an idea of, like, how does the sausage get made? How do you actually make a film? And so we are documenting it here on the Cinematic Schematic with a monthly segment about the filmmaking process. So every month we're going to be, until the film is released, we're going to be talking with Jacob and Zachary Burns about how is it made, what is the thing they're working on right now, or they've just finished working on recently that's a big piece of production, and just kind of go from there. So, of course, got to welcome both of you gentlemen, mystery ghosts. To my left, Mr. Jacob Burns, the writer-director of Shifter. Welcome back to the Cinematic Schematic.
Hey.
And further to my left is Zachary Burns, producer on Shifter Film.
Oh, hey, guys.
What's up?
Well, a lot.
Well, yeah, a lot.
You guys have been pretty busy lately, yes?
We have been. It's been crazy, well, leading up to this moment, crazy probably year or so since we really first started kicking the movie into gear. But yeah, this week especially, in the last couple of weeks, have been pretty hectic.
Pretty intense.
All right. I think in this podcast diary, so to speak, I think there's going to be two areas we're going to be hitting on: fundraising and casting.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob, before we get started, could you tell me a little bit about Shifter, the film?
Yeah, so Shifter is a time travel horror movie about a young woman who experiences these very painful and gruesome side effects from an experiment with time travel gone wrong that causes her to shift through time at random. So it's a very it's something I'm very very excited about. It's got the cool, interesting, gory visual effects, but kind of wrapping around a kind of a character drama about this young woman. So a film that's totally my jam, if you will. It's all the things I like to play with.
Okay, all right. And this is going to be same wheelhouse as Electric Nostalgia, but kind of different area of the wheelhouse, so to speak. So Electric Nostalgia, more of a thriller about robots, a little psychological thriller dealing with robots. It was black and white. Shifter, time travel, body horror. So it's like, if you like one, you probably like both, but also they are two different things.
Totally. Yeah, I think the two films, kind of scratching the surface, will look kind of similar, sound similar, in that they're both kind of character dramas with kind of a horror or sci-fi wrapping around them. Shifter is going to feel a lot different than Electric Nostalgia for a multitude of reasons. One, it'll be in color, which is one of the first questions I get asked every time. And then for many other reasons, it has a very different setting, very different set of characters. and very different kind of story structure, especially with the time travel stuff, which is a whole other thing to deal with. So yeah, really, really excited. It's kind of the next step and kind of pushing forward and kind of doing something bigger and better than what we did with Nostalgia.
Zachary, anything else you'd like to add?
Did we mention it's in color?
And you've launched an Indiegogo at shifterfilm.com.
Correct.
So where are you guys at in that fundraising process?
First thing, after you have a script and you've got all that stuff going and you kind of know what film or project you're wanting to do, then the next big question is, okay, how do we fund it? How do we
pay
actually
for everything?
So there's a few ways you can go. You can go the investor route and stuff like that, which is a whole nother ordeal to deal with. Or you could do the crowdfunding thing, which is what we did on Electric Nostalgia.
Do you go to the people for your money, or do you go to the rich guys?
So we chose the people.
We chose the people.
Of course, everyone, including the wealthy.
Yeah, hopefully some of them are rich.
Wealthy investors,
Of course, yeah,
and wealthy
we're not
investors are the people as
excluding
well.
the rich people.
Yeah, don't exclude
yeah,
anybody. But yeah, that's kind of the question. Like, and so we chose to kind of one of our big things with Planet Thunder is our goals is to kind of create a culture and a base, a fan base, if you will, or just kind of a community of people who kind of come along with us for the ride for all our projects and stuff like that. And so crowdfunding is a great way to do that because it's a great way to, one, you can get funding for the movie, but also it's a great opportunity to really spread the word and get the hype going for the movie. That's why we chose that route for this film.
Heck yeah.
And so the actual question was, what point are we at?
No, that's good. No, that's good. No, that's good. I think that's good to know. That I think a lot of people out there need to know that, though. Hey, one, there's not just one way to fund your film, and there's not one way, but there's also no easy way.
Correct.
Anytime you're asking people to give them your money, that's a very hard thing to do.
Absolutely.
So, I think that's very important for people to know kind of your strategy because there's it's a curious thing. A lot of people just think, again, movies just come out of nowhere. They cost money.
Yeah.
So my next question on that front, though, is how do you go about determining what your budget is?
For this one, we kind of started with the budget and went from there. For Nostalgia, we ended up raising around $15,000 through Indiegogo, and then we had some other money from other places that we were able to kind of use to help kind of fill the gaps there. So we kind of looked at Nostalgia, looked where we did well and where we used that money well and where we could maybe use it more effectively this time, and kind of ended up deciding on $30,000 for the crowdfunding campaign. So kind of taking what we had done last time and kind of hoping that through the goodwill and whatever we've built up, resources and stuff like that we've built up over the couple of years since Nostalgia would kind of add up. So we essentially just kind of doubled that to 30,000. And so that's kind of where we landed for our current crowdfunding campaign.
That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
I hope you're paying attention in business class in college.
I wish I took any.
Yeah, we're kind of doing this. The strategy we're kind of doing is making it up as we go along. It's kind of
It's great.
So after we decide to do that, so we decided that we were going to do this probably in January.
Yeah.
I think is when we kind of finally were like, okay, this is what we're doing. So from there, then we broke down, okay, what are the steps we need to take before we actually launch this thing? And then from there, once we kind of knew what we needed to get accomplished first, then we decided, okay, that'll probably take this amount of time. That means this is probably the date that we'll launch the campaign. These are the dates that the campaign will go through and stuff like that. And so it's just kind of breaking each step down, and then from there, kind of adding on to that from there.
So how did you guys land on crowdsourcing in July? Was that part of your strategy? Or was that just whenever it seemed best for your schedule? Like, how did you guys decide this was the time to do it?
Well, how we kind of landed on that was we kind of just looked ahead throughout the year and we're like, oh yeah, Dead Center, like the biggest, coolest thing film related that happens in Oklahoma every year. We should do something about that. And so we kind of based everything around when Dead Center happens, which is in mid-June. Looking at that, we decided how we wanted to best utilize Dead Center was that's where we would start getting the name out for Shifter for this movie, and also use it as a giant casting call net to local actors and actors from out of town and all of this. Again, just to help use it as a really big push to get the name of Shifter out there in front of people. Then we decided after we did that at Dead Center, use that as a launching pad for the name of Shifter. Then a few weeks after that, we thought July would be the great time to launch the Indiegogo campaign, because then it's got the name out there. We're in the middle of casting, which also is a great way to get the name out there and get us in front of a lot of people. So that's just kind of where we landed.
We're right in the middle of the Indiegogo right now.
Correct.
Where I think it launched 9 days ago? 10 days ago?
10 days ago, I think.
As of this recording.
As of this moment.
As of
this moment. So we're recording
10,
on July 18th. If you're listening, you're hearing
Yeah.
it at least a week after that, after today. But know that you guys are about 30% into your goal as of the 18th.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting. Congratulations on that.
Thank
bit.
you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's been amazing.
But that still means you got 70% to go before the end of the
Thank you.
Indiegogo.
Didn't know there was going to be math involved.
So this Indiegogo, which can be found at shifterfilm.com,
Please
check it out.
contribute. Please.
Consider contributing at shifterfilm.com.
Please.
You guys are running this until what date?
August 18th,
Yeah,
I believe
August
it's the
18th
last-
should be the last day.
last day.
So a month from today, as of this recording.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to ask the hard questions now.
Okay.
We'll start with the less happy one. As a filmmaker, what happens if you don't make your goal?
There's a lot of mixed emotions. So
We make a movie.
we make a movie is what happens either way. If we don't reach our goal, really either way, we're going to make a movie and we're going to make it for whatever we can. It might take us some rethinking on the budget and stuff like that, but we've grown up and learned the biz and learned what we're doing through super low budget filmmaking, so it won't be anything new for us, and we've built up a lot of great resources and stuff like that that we can take advantage of. So either way, there's going to be a movie. With our current campaign, it's flexible funding, so whatever is there at the end of the campaign we do still get. We don't lose all of that, so we should be able to even right now if we got no more money at all, which please I hope that's not what happens. but we could we've made projects at any level and do our best to kind of utilize that and use that put as much of that money on screen as possible. So ultimately, that's what we're going to do, no matter what, whether we don't make it or we make way more than we expected.
Okay, so happier question.
Yeah.
What happens if you exceed your goal? You guys take a vacation afterward? Is it all paid for vacation with an extra 10 grand
lots
you
of
get?
high fives, probably personally going to people's houses and giving them high fives and stuff like that. That would be amazing. That would just kind of open up a lot of opportunities for the film, especially for post-production and stuff like that, where a lot of funds and stuff like that. It's hard to save money for post-production when you're in production.
Very hard.
And so that could kind of help us start, kind of give us a pool to draw from that. And then also, just more money means we can hire more people to be on set, which would really be a huge asset for me, Zachary, and Vinny, who on Nostalgia, just to give an example. So on Electric Nostalgia, Vinny was the first AD and the key set PA and the craft service guy. And so he not only was trying to keep everybody on schedule and contact actors and let them know when they're supposed to be there and also producing. He also was the guy who had to go to the grocery store and buy snacks for all the crew, and then get there early to set it up. And so,
Thank you, Vinny.
Yeah,
Thanks, Vinny.
it was very taxing on all three of us because so many jobs that each of us had to take on. Really, especially Zachary and Vinny, they did a great job of letting me mostly direct. So yeah, that would be the big thing. If we make more money, that could just mean more hands on set to help this thing get made.
Okay, got it. So that's the hard question. Hard one's behind you. So basically, the $30,000 is really the minimum of. I mean, you can make a movie for less, but to meet the vision that you have now, the minimum you need is $30,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we had 30,000, we could probably do most of the things that we want to do. At a certain level of quality.
And then and anything you get over 30 grand is gravy, but not like fun money. It's like, oh no, we can actually focus more on our key main jobs.
Exactly. Yeah. It could help kind of disbursement of work and stuff like that, responsibilities, and then just kind of open a lot of doors. And, it could help with post-production stuff as far as like sound design and VFX
Visual
and stuff
effects,
like that. Like, we'll need money for all that stuff later too. So, the more funds we raise, the better opportunity for the film's quality to rise.
Okay, so if you're listening out there and any of this sounds enticing to you at all, you can contribute to this Indiegogo. It is still going to be live when you're listening to this episode, as long as you're listening to it before August 18th. So if you're listening before August 18th, shifterfilm.com. Check it out. Contribute it. These guys need 30 grand. I know there's 30 grand out there. If you're listening, head on over, throw money at it, please.
And there's lots of cool perks.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of cool perks. Yeah. It's not just like give us money and not get anything in return. They get like all sorts of cool swag.
Yeah. So on top of a cool movie at the end of all this, Zachary, you can talk about some of the perks.
Oh, yeah. We got cool T-shirts you could get. We got travel mugs.
Woo.
We got custom enamel pins
Woo.
that you can wear. Pin it on anything, like your shirt.
Anything.
Your
shifter shirt?
Your shifter shirt, your other kind of shirt. I don't know. What else do we got? We got custom concept artwork that you can get as prints from super cool local artist Jerry Bennett.
Woo! And he'll autograph it.
He will autograph it for you because he's that cool. What else do we got? If you give enough, you can come hang out with us on set during production one day. If you give even more than that, you can have a small role in the movie as a featured extra, and have your face on the big screen.
Ooh.
Yeah. So yeah, there's all kinds of cool perks if you are enticed to contribute.
So they make it worth your while. Shifterfilm.com. Contribute today. Okay, so we've talked about the fundraising piece. So this is where we're at. Fundraising is the big one, but also you are at the tail end of casting. So basically, you guys have already done your first wave of casting. You've done your open call, but you've narrowed it down to people you're going to call back. Talk with me a little bit about the process of casting, specifically for this film.
Totally. So, like Zachary was saying earlier, we released the casting call. That was kind of that's basically how we announced the movie officially was happening, was through the casting call. Mm-hmm. And it was one thing we learned from Nostalgia was how quickly word can spread about a project through a casting call. And so we knew whenever we were going to announce Shifter that was going to be kind of our initial announcement of the film, because that's just what really surprised us on Nostalgia. So, and luckily the same thing happened again. Like, we put that out there, and then just very, very quickly, we were getting a ton of emails and messages, and the word spread beyond just Oklahoma City. It was spreading to Norman and Tulsa and Austin and Dallas and stuff like that, and all over the country, really. And so that was very exciting. So what we did was we put out a call. We had a kind of a scheduling website that people could go to and set up if they were able to audition in Oklahoma City, they could do that, or Austin. We also had Vinny ran auditions in Austin for us, a similar process. And then, we saw roughly around 30 people a day for 4 days.
Yeah,
here in Oklahoma City. And then there was another 20 or so in Austin. Mm-hmm. And then I don't even know how many video auditions we got.
A lot.
So we ultimately saw around 200 people, maybe more. Mm-hmm. which was a lot of people, and we're still kind of going through all that. But that was very exciting.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Just so many actors.
Yeah.
To try to sort through and figure out who's just right for all these parts. So,
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
Well, it's got to be tough when you like more than one person for the same role, and you only have a
Totally.
limited number of roles, right?
Oh yeah, that's the worst. It's a very agonizing process because like we did the auditions ourselves. We didn't have a casting director, and so we were there for every single audition, and it was great because we met a ton of new people.
Yeah, a bunch of really cool people.
And so that's always fun. But then the bummer is, oh man, we met all these cool people and we want to put all these cool people in our movie or help them out or just, frankly, I just want to hang out with them. But there's what, 7 roles that we were auditioning for.
Yeah.
And
so 200 people.
Yeah.
Whittle that down to 7.
Yeah. It's a tough process, and inevitably there's going to be, more than one person who could work in a role. And kind of what we're facing now with the lead role is we have a few options, and really they're all great, but they all had kind of a different take on the role and kind of bring something different. And so that's going to be the tough part, is which take is the right take for the movie. It's not necessarily about talent anymore. It's about kind of their different approaches and their take and stuff like that. So that's our next big hurdle is that once we go through callbacks,
Kind of determining whose take best fits your vision.
yeah.
That's tough. So I'm curious. Did you guys do video auditions for Electric Nostalgia?
We did some.
Yeah.
We there's probably around like 10 or so video auditions, I think, for Electric Nostalgia, which is way less than what we had for this one. We cast a couple people from video auditions.
Heck yeah.
So yeah.
Do you think there are any benefits or disadvantages to people who audition in person over video auditions?
I think there's pros and cons to each.
Yeah.
Video auditions are nice because they're easy. The actor can do it in the comfort of their home without all the nervousness of having a casting director or the actual directors that are staring at you. And then they can just send it in, and then they can move on with their lives and just do it in their free time. And then, same thing. Like, I can casually get them. I can be in my, pajamas or whatever, and and casually watch them, late at night, whatever. But
Not saying that that's happened on this movie.
no, of course not.
It's definitely happened.
But I personally much prefer in-person auditions for a few reasons. Most specifically is just that opportunity to really get to know the person. You're not really, a video audition, they might send 1 or 2 takes of the scene, and then that's it. You really don't get to understand that person's personality as a person. And really one of the most important things on a set is like how you work with people and how you interact with them. And especially actors, like that's super important. That relationship between the director and the actor is super, super crucial to the movie. And so it's really hard to get that from a video audition because you just don't know. And they're just putting their best takes and sending those to you, which can make them look great. And that's a great starting point. But ultimately I need to know, how you are to work with, and and are our personalities going to blend well and make the movie better working together. Like, that was the great thing about Electric Nostalgia, was the cast was supremely talented, but they also were just really, really fun to be around, and a really great group of people. But they're incredibly passionate. They took kind of ownership over the movie as well, and really it was a passion project for everybody. And so that passion, probably my passion rubbed off on them, and their passion rubbed back on me. And so it kind of helped push each other to make the movie better. There was a lot of times on set where I was like, oh man, like, this cast is so good. They're doing such great performances. crap, the movie has to be really good now. like I have to make a movie that lives up to their performances. And so that's perfect. Like that's how it should be. And hopefully it was the same thing for them, that they were, hopefully they thought they were in a good movie, and wanted to do their best, to make that movie even better. So, that's kind of what auditions are all about. So that's why I kind of prefer in-person versus video.
Very good. I mean, I think it's just really good for listeners out there to understand. Again, going same way with the crowdsourcing, there are multiple methods in which to do this thing. There's not one way to skin a cat. It's just about what best suits your needs and your goals. And it's also good to know what filmmakers like. Some filmmakers probably prefer video. Others prefer, like you say, catching them in person, so you can kind of catch them on their feet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of it. Yeah, like you said, there's different ways. Some directors prefer video. Some prefer having a casting director kind of weed out stuff and kind of give them what they think, and then they kind of just choose from there. But for me, especially at this budget level, like it's really beneficial for me to just get in there and really get to know these people.
Are you guys ready to be done with casting?
That's my answer. I'll interpret it for you. Yes. Yes. It's a fun process because it's kind of the first step for our first week in holding auditions here in Oklahoma City. It was incredibly exciting, even though we knew we were going to see so many people, and it was going to be just physically kind of exhausting. But we were also really excited because it's kind of the first real step of being like, okay, yeah, this movie is really happening. We're actually starting to turn the wheels to make this thing actually come to life, which is really cool. But yeah, it's also just, I mean, with a lot of elements of filmmaking in general, it's really exciting at first. But then once you spend so much time working in the gears and everything, you're like, okay, I'm ready to move down the line to some other part of the machine. But I mean, at the same time, it's still really exciting. Like, we're in the middle of trying to figure out callbacks and get all that done, and I'm still very excited about that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And like as a writer, it's really exciting to start seeing actors reading those words, and it kind of gives you a new perspective on the scenes and stuff like that. And actually, honestly, throughout the auditions, there's a few scenes I'm like, I need to rewrite that.
It sounds different when someone says it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like in the way the interpretations they bring, and sometimes they just bring something new to it, or the way they interpret it is different than what you had thought. And so it kind of makes you rethink that and need to go back. So, but yeah, like you said, like seeing them kind of read those words for the first time, like those first few people especially, it was really exciting because it's the first time that for a brief second those characters are alive for the first time.
That's exciting. Kind of a tease of the things to come.
Yeah.
Speaking of a tease of the things to come, what is the next step once you finish with casting? Once you wrap up the crowdsourcing, where do you guys go next?
So that's a great question. So next big thing will probably be, we're kind of already in some early phases of it, but kind of figuring out who the crew is going to be, especially kind of the top tier levels. Yeah. We're hoping to bring on some more kind of production side types this time than we had last time. And then also hoping to have a little bit bigger crew on set than Nostalgia. So we've got a lot of ideas of who it'll probably be a lot of the same people that we've used over and over again. So that'll be kind of the next big step. And then once we're crewed up, I'll probably throughout the next few weeks, and especially after the crowdfunding, probably take another crack at the script, do another rewrite. And then we'll really start jumping into like location scouting and production design and art design, and really start kind of putting the movie together.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
Very exciting times. If you're out there listening, you can make sure to stay in touch and up to date on all of Shifter's latest developments by subscribing to the Cinematic Schematic podcast. This is going to be something that's going to roll. I think about once a month is what we're aiming for.
Sweet.
Just to see, hey, where's that? What's the latest thing that's happened? Subscribers can look forward to that, and you can also find all these conversations on the Cinematropolis.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/the-Cinematropolis and on Twitter at the Cinematrop. Gentlemen, thanks so much for talking with me today about Shifter's latest updates. I'm very excited to be on this journey with you, alongside you, watching from afar, more like witnessing as this develops. I think it's really exciting. And I think it's a great opportunity for listeners out there who maybe want to get into film to understand exactly, hey, this is a very big, long process. What does that actually look like?
Yeah.
It's a good opportunity for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, listeners, well, out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Up next, we'll be talking with Alexandra Bohannon about, related to Shifter, time travel film scores on the latest edition of Soundtrack. So make sure to stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to Soundtrack, the curated soundtrack and score analysis segment on the Cinematic Schematic, presented by the Cinematropolis.com. We're back after a little break last month because we did so much Dead Center coverage, we probably lost our collective minds, especially Caleb.
So much Dead Center coverage, guys. We Dead Centered so hard.
We dead it ourselves.
We centered.
Sorry, not on it. Don't have enough coffee
No.
for whatever. If that was a joke, I can't even tell.
I think a good next step would be to head on over to the Cinematropolis.com and check out all of our Dead Center coverage. I think we had like 5 or 6 podcasts that came out
Yes.
and around 12 written articles.
Insane.
So we
These-
had your back covered, guys.
So Soundtrack didn't have a post last month, but that's okay because we're all back now. As a reminder, I'm Alexandra Bohannon, full-on film score geek, host of Soundtrack. I'm not alone. You can already hear that. That's spoilers. I mean, okay, our topic this month has some spoilers because sometimes our theme is the twist. But before we get into that, what is your name? Because we're not alone.
Hi, my name is Caleb Masters. I'm the editor-in-chief here at the Cinematropolis.com and your voice of the Cinematic Schematic.
Wow. Yeah, so this month we're tackling the category of time travel movies. This is in honor of Planet Thunder Productions' newest feature film in pre-production stages, fundraising stages. And Caleb, as the editor of the Cinematropolis, how about you read the synopsis for the newest Planet Thunder Productions film, Shifter?
In Shifter, a young woman experiences painful side effects from an experiment with time travel gone wrong.
That's on our good trash media days. Like, that'd be a long line synopsis that we'd probably thumbs up. It's like, it gets it. It gets it. It's
Simple,
everything.
to the point, doesn't spoil anything.
One sentence.
Yes.
Got us covered. Okay, well, so if that kind of one sentence log line tickles your fancy, along with all of the stuff you're going to be hearing on the next however many minutes that this episode of Soundtrack goes, why don't you chip into their Indiegogo? It'll be in the show notes all over the Cinematropolis and the Cinematic Schematic pages on Planet Thunder Productions website.
Shifterfilm.com.
Shifterfilm.com. I knew there was going to be an easy URL, but I just didn't know it.
If you want to contribute to the Indiegogo, or you like time travel, which is the theme of the episode today, make sure to head on over to shifterfilm.com and contribute today.
Exactly.
I'm not being held at gunpoint by Jacob or Zachary Burns to say that, I promise.
Yeah, it's just Vinny. The one. Just kidding.
Shifterfilm.com, please. Head there now. I know. I need to time travel back to stop this awful thing from happening.
Absolutely. So this month, we're tackling time travel films. Just to get this out of the way, if you're itching to hear some of this... You're sorely mistaken.
No, what? I thought we were going to go take a second trip in the DeLorean, Alex.
Yeah, so I know it just so happens that our overlords at the Cinematropolis.com chose the theme of time travel films right after we did an episode on Spielberg where we talked at length about Back to the Future,
yes,
which
correct.
is like the time travel movie that anyone ever thinks of.
It's
right?
true. It's true.
So, but if you want to hear deep dives, hot takes on Back to the Future, Alan Silvestri's amazing score, check out the Spielberg episode. Yes, we talk about it at length. We know Spielberg didn't direct Back to the Future, but yeah, head on over there, episode 5. It's totally worth your time to get your fill of Back to the Future. But anyway, opening the show this week, Caleb, do you have any clue? It's kind of weird, huh?
Okay, yeah. So this is a tough one for me because one of the music cues sounds really familiar.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm like, this is ringing a bell, but none of the rest of it's sticking with me. So enlighten me.
Yeah. So that was 1968. Classic science fiction masterpiece, Planet of the Apes.
Oh, Planet of the
directed,
Apes, yes.
Franklin J. Schnafer. Scored none other than Jerry Goldsmith. God bless that man. Do you have any familiarity with Goldsmith, Caleb?
Probably.
Yeah, you do.
The name's not familiar, but I imagine if he scored Planet of the Apes, he's probably all over the place.
Yeah. So he is the person who is he passed away in 2004. Received 18 total Academy Award nominations, making him one of the most nominated composers in Oscar history. Despite this, only winning one Oscar for The Omen, 1976.
Ooh, The Omen.
Yes.
You don't say.
Yes, but, Jerry Goldsmith, he scored some movies. Movies like just some basics like this. Jerry Goldsmith, Star Trek the Motion Picture. And,
it's fantastic.
And, of course, the corresponding TNG theme based upon his score for the motion picture. And then, I can't remember, I feel like really bad, but I know he did probably another 3, if not 4 of the other original TOS scores for the original motion picture set. Basically building the groundwork for how Star Trek sounds in motion picture form. I think and then Jerry Goldsmith also did Alien as well.
Oh, the original Alien. It's
Yes.
a fantastic
Yeah,
score.
absolutely.
So obviously like a granddaddy of Star Trek. The original motion picture.
Star Trek, yeah. And he's one of the few people to have 2 AFI top 25 American film scores. So this guy is like, this is the business with Planet of the Apes. But what's really interesting about Planet of the Apes, because so we heard with this Star Trek, and I have to say Star Trek really hard because our name here is Sound Trek, and it's
we got to blip the
punch
praise
the star
on Star Trek. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So our thing with Star Trek, you hear those big swooping that swooping melody, and it comes in really strongly. Whenever you think of like kind of classic cinematic scoring, I think of things that sound like Star Trek. Whenever I think of scoring, now
like an opera or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Full orchestral treatment. Got lots of woodwinds and swirling, hopeful music. It's very uplifting, very energetic, and that's one thing that's amazing about Star Trek. And I don't want to spend too much on Star Trek because I really want it to have its own due in the future.
And don't worry, there are plenty of there's plenty of time travel in Star
Star Trek, absolutely. One thing that's really empowering about it is that it's a very optimistic view of the future. And I think that one thing Goldsmith's score captures is that optimism, that future forward thinking that's so just bright for the future. It's great. Now, 1968, Goldsmith caught some massive attention for his almost controversial score for Planet of the Apes because it's completely avant-garde. When scoring Planet of the Apes, Goldsmith, he used like a bunch of really weird techniques. You know how we talked about in the Godzilla episode, how the composer was, using the resin bow to make the sound design for Godzilla's roar, and like complete like manipulation of how you're, quote, supposed to do things and how you're supposed to, score film or manipulate sound. So basically he used like looping drums into like echo chambers, and he had horns blown without mouthpieces.
Oh, wow.
Woodwind players were fingering their keys without like blowing into them, and he would record that as kind of like some more like sound texture. Use steel mixing bowls and other objects to use to make some of those weird percussive noises, like totally just off the rails kind of stuff. But that's why it was like so innovative for its time, especially, and of course Planet of the Apes is one of those top 25 AFI film scores preserved forever.
I think it fits the spirit of the film too. That's such an experimental film, and at the time was very risky, and I want to say it wasn't super well received when it came out.
And the thing is like Goldsmith does a really great job as a composer capturing the tone of like two different worlds that are forward thinking. I mean, Star Trek has a lot of time travel in it, like we discussed. These two different perspectives on what our future could potentially look like. And so when we get that twist where it's at the end where Charlton Heston's kneeling on the beach and, seeing the Statue of Liberty, spoilers.
You maniacs! You blew it up! Oh, damn you! God damn you all to hell!
I'm sorry, it's 1968. I mean, I got spoiled for this movie.
Way to ruin the movie.
I mean,
Alex.
it's in a thing called
to
time
ruin
travel.
the movie.
So it is where time travel is kind of the twist for this film, but it's just really interesting how that negative pessimism and like that hopelessness, it really is pervasive through the score, and it really pushed the envelope in which people then have kind of fallen into not necessarily mimicry, but I think that kind of that avant-garde approach to scoring opened a lot of doors for people that might have not approached subject matter in that way before, which I think is really freaking cool.
Yeah, no, I'd say so. Again, I think it just goes to show how ahead of its time Planet of the Apes was all around, including with the film score. I didn't realize that was such an experimental piece, but it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those that it completely fits the tone of what the film is going for, definitely, and really pushes the envelope. I mean, I'm a big fan of that movie because of it still blows my mind, the incredible approach to like prosthetics and the special effects still hold up to this day. So Goldsmith just nailed it, I think, on that score. It's not just Goldsmith. I mean, so Goldsmith kind of like is one of these early guys in examining like how we can use film scoring to kind of explain and support concepts around time travel, because there's a much more modern film that has time travel in it, and definitely it can be just as weird, honestly, but in a totally different way. So we're going to be moving on to our second film, saying goodbye to Planet of the Apes for now. Definitely check it out, of course, if you haven't already.
Well, and I just want to throw out there, too, I'm really glad you included Planet of the Apes in this month's selection, because I don't often think of it as a time travel film, even though it's definitely a time travel film, because we don't find out until the very end of the movie.
What to twist.
Yeah. It wasn't until you get into like the third or fourth one when it's very on the nose time travel.
Yeah, where like people are getting into,
they time travel
machines.
Yeah, exactly. When they time travel back to like San Francisco. Yeah, anyway, it's a great selection.
Right.
Planet of the Apes. Consider that like as an influential time travel film.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I feel like, and that's why I'm really excited for the Burns Brothers Shifter, because so often we put things in like a DeLorean in terms of how we think of time travel. Like we as pop culture connoisseurs and fans and people that like reading and watching stuff, we're like, oh yeah, so time travel's when they get in a thing and then they go to the future or the past. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's not just that, man. Like there's a lot of other stuff that can be related to time travel. And I know you're a huge fan of time travel as like a mechanic.
Yeah.
Used in like narrative.
It's well, because the themes that time travel films deal with, the stories you tell with time travel, for me, are the most fun.
Right.
Yeah, because it's like, who hasn't ever regretted something in their life? And it's like, well, what if I could just go back and change it?
Yeah.
And then especially when you apply that on a more macro level, like with Planet of the Apes, like what if, oh my God, we committed this huge atrocity. What if I could go back and stop it from happening? You know, what if you could go back in time and kill Hitler or certain Cheeto flake flavored presidents and keep them from rising to power? Like, what would you do it? Is that the right thing to do? Or do you live with the consequences? And I think that opens up a lot of interesting conversations about human nature. Anyway,
Right.
it's fascinating. And then not to mention it's just fun.
Right.
And also it lends to my other favorite subgenre, which is like alternate parallel realities, which are usually caused by time travel.
Well, buddy, gotta strap in because that's all about what this next movie is about. So
Strapped in. Strapped in.
get ready.
Alex,
Yeah.
are we in heaven? I heard the voices of angels.
Yeah.
And I guess they're time traveling angels. So
Yeah.
you've got me at a loss. It sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't recognize this one.
I understand because both, I think, with Planet of the Apes and this film as well, they're not films that it's like, yeah, John Williams, Indiana Jones, Jesus Christ, or anything like that. Like, this is kind of, like you have to be really paying attention.
It's not like an iconic theme, but that doesn't mean the movie's not iconic.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that is the first track called Carpathian Ridge from Richard Kelly's 2001 film Donnie Darko.
Oh, shit.
Scored by Michael Andrews. Yeah.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
It's funny. Okay, I can see it now. Like in my head, I can see where this is playing at, and it totally plays out. It's so weird though because this movie has been so closely associated with the soundtrack, not the score. Mm-hmm. Because I always think, iconically, the cover from the Tears and Fears cover,
Mad World.
Yeah,
But yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. So, yeah.
Very excited.
Yeah, so, that's one thing that I thought it was interesting because it's like, yeah, you can get into the parallel universes and time travel. And it's like, yeah, with this film, we have both, obviously. So all of the tracks kind of from Donnie Darko's score, because yes, it does have a soundtrack that is independent of this film, of course, with a lot of tears. There's actually a Tears for Fears song that isn't Mad World, obviously, on the...
Oh, Head Over Heels is one of my favorite songs of Tears and Fears that's also in here. And sorry, it was Gary Jules covering Tears and Fears.
Tears for Fears, yes. So it all has a kind of similar feel to it. Mostly this is due to a very, 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 very limited budget and scope for Michael Andrews. The whole score itself is only 30 minutes long. So if you didn't notice it, that's fine, because most of these tracks are like a minute 50, and there's only like 12 of them, and the movie's 2 hours. So there's like a lot of stuff that isn't scored in this film. The actual score itself also wasn't even purchasable because... 2001, Donnie Darko comes out in a very limited release. It's a sleeper hit, and then it begins this cult following, like basically all other movies kind of do with that have a cult following when it gets on the home media. And then 2005, the director's cut premiered at Sundance, and then that's kind of where the Darko phenomenon took off more. And then that's whenever you could actually buy the score, but for a long time you couldn't even buy like the soundtrack or the score. All of it kind of sounds the same because Andrews started out, the composer, he's a band member for a band called the Grey Boy All Stars, and basically it's so low budget that his portion of the money for the soundtrack was extremely thin. So it was basically just Michael Andrews playing everything, and he hired 2 female singers to kind of do that ethereal choir stuff. So he played everything: piano, mellotron, mini marimba, xylophone, ukulele, guitar, and organ.
Well, really, talk about no budget.
He played everything, mixed it himself, all that kind of stuff. And so that's why it is kind of so simplistic and so haunting. It fits the film perfectly, but it's actually driven by the fact that the guy didn't have a lot of money.
So again, getting very creative and innovative with his lack of budget.
Exactly. And it's funny because Richard Kelly tells, Andrews is a guitarist. That's like his primary vocation. And so Kelly is like, yeah, don't really want guitar. And so he had to just like teach himself all these instruments so that he could like produce the score, because he just didn't have the money or resources to bring in a bunch of people like you have with Planet of the Apes. Even though we have like this zany avant-garde stuff in Planet of the Apes, he still hired bassoonists and crap like that. So, but he was a one-man shop kind of doing this all by himself, which I think is really interesting. Like that's something that I don't think so far we've really discussed, and which is, I can always bring it back to Shifter, but like the whole idea that you can use your limitations. It's looking at your limitations as another form of strength and having you get more creative, because I can't imagine Donnie Darko having differenter music than
right.
that.
It's so fitting and perfect.
Yeah.
It sounds like Donnie Darko. So by having a full orchestra, what would it really have added? It probably would have had a totally different sound, and it wouldn't have sounded like the movie as we know it.
Exactly. What are you getting or losing with the presence of more money? Which, of course, more money always helps to some extent, but it's just like...
Well, I think obviously more money always helps, but there is something about having limitations that does force you to be creative in certain areas. And of course, who doesn't want more budget as any filmmaker or in any job you do? Who doesn't want more budget? But at the same time, oftentimes when you have those restraints, it gives you a guideline, and you say, what is the coolest thing I can do with this guideline, these parameters I have to stay in?
Exactly. And one of my favorite things, because there's like this interview about Michael Andrews' production process for Donnie Darko. It's the best part of it for me. When he says, in a way, your faults become your trademark. The fact that he couldn't play very much outside. He could play guitar, but he couldn't play these more complex instruments outside of like these, haunting notes. And here he is, kind of manipulating that into a full score, and that it works so well. And that's one thing that I thought was very interesting about Donnie Darko, specifically the score in general. It's very subtle. It doesn't draw a lot of attention to itself. It does in some places. I couldn't actually find, I don't know if this is like just the release or something, but there's that scene where Donnie is in the room where he's got Patrick Swayze. He's like presenting his like love everybody whoa stuff, and he's like that 90s tastic music. I wasn't able to find that, nor the like actual music that plays under Donnie's raging at that guy, which was really interesting, because that was like kind of more of a deviation from the rest of the tone of the film.
And perhaps that's why it wasn't included on the soundtrack.
Potentially. Yeah, absolutely. So like Andrew's other, his other role models for scoring, John Barry, Ennio Morricone, he wanted to have that song for his film. And so he chose the song Mad World, originally sung by Tears for Fears, 1982. And so his friend, his childhood friend, Gary Jules, sings as Andrews plays piano. Very simple, right? And what's so interesting about this, because I've actually never heard the original Tears for Fears song, so we're gonna play it right now because it's not bad. Like obviously we had to have that song to have Gary's version.
But let me guess, the first time you heard it was probably in the 2006 Gears of War trailer, and no, it was that was like an award-winning commercial because it incorporated that theme song, and like for me, and I think a lot of people in our generation, that was the first version of that
Definitive
song we
version.
heard. Yeah. So it's like even though it wasn't the first version, every version of what we heard after that compared to Gary Jules' version. Tears for Fears version feels more 80s-tastic, but it's still great.
Yeah, it's great in its own way. So here's the original 1982 version of Mad World, Tears for Fears, sung by Tears for Fears.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, frightened to live for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, no expression. Have my head, I want to drown my sorrow, no tomorrow. It's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Happy birthday, happy birthday. To feel the way that every child should. Sit and listen, sit and listen. Went to school and I was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. Now teacher, tell me what's my lesson. You cried through me, you cried through me. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, 'cause I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world.
So that was the original version, and I actually
Soundtrack listeners, if you haven't heard the original version, please make sure to tweet at us at the Cinematrop or comment on Facebook or tweet at me or Alex, because I'm interested to know how many of you have never heard the original version of Mad World, because a lot of people, as you said, a lot of people think Gary Jules is the original version of the song.
I was aware that Tears for Fears, that the Mad World that Gary Jules did was a cover, but I'd actually never heard the original until doing the research for this episode.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And so people in the YouTube comments on this video are being really unkind for Tears for Fears, guys, because it's like you couldn't have had Gary's version without the original. Come on,
people
now.
on YouTube's comments just aren't nice in general.
Right, that.
But have some respect, guys. Be like, this is not my preferred. You can say this is not my preferred version, but it's interesting to hear how Gary Jules made it better. You know what I mean? If you feel that way.
Yeah, because I think that it's a fairly easy statement to make that Gary Jules is probably the definitive version of the song.
Yeah.
Just like Johnny Cash's Hurt is the definitive version of that song.
Yep.
It fits better because one thing that because we're going to listen to Gary Jules's version in a second. One thing that I want you to think about when you listen to this is how, because I love things that sound super 80s like Tears for Fears, but I don't feel that the lyrics match the instrumentation underneath what is being
and it's
sung.
a lot more upbeat, like poppy.
Very poppy, very poppy.
And not
very
poppy,
more
not like as in
upbeat.
popular, like as in it pops. You know?
Yeah. And it's way more upbeat. And so whenever it gets to the part in the lyrics where they're singing about happy birthday, I'm like, I don't believe what you're singing right now because of the instrumentation. And it feels like we're being almost too lighthearted with this material. Now, granted, this may be because I've only heard Gary Jules' Tears for Fear, Gary Jules' Mad Love my entire life. But so here we are. We're going to listen to his 2001 version. This specific track is the reason why the soundtrack basically kind of got big. I misspoke earlier. It debuted in 2002. Specifically, Gary Jules' Mad World, which was only on this album, kept on being like a single in Europe, Canada, just kept on hitting like the Billboard charts, basically. Then that gained a lot of interest and popularity, and not just the song particularly, but the full soundtrack, and then of course the film. So that's kind of interesting take on how you can use the composition of the score as, and the original music like Morricone and others do, as a marketing technique for your particular film.
I feel like the soundtrack could sell the movie. Like, it's such a good soundtrack. You're like, if you had never seen the movie but you heard it, or you heard the song, you'd be like, I gotta check that out.
Exactly. So here's Gary Jules accompanied by Michael Andrews for 2001's Donnie Darko, Mad World, covered from the Tears for Fears original.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, no expression. Hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Happy birthday, happy birthday. And to feel the way that every child should sit and listen, sit and listen. Went to school and I was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. Hello teacher, tell me what's my lesson. Look right through me, look right through me. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Enlarging your world. Mad.
So yeah, that's Gary Jules' version of Mad World.
Give me a sec, Alex.
Yeah, basically, right?
It's like a double whammy because it takes me back to my very sad emo years of high school. But it's just such a damn good song,
Right.
and it's so still emotional. I haven't listened to it in a long time.
Yeah, and one thing I know, Donnie Darko, at least for me and in my circles, kind of gets like, sometimes it can get a bad rep for being like edgy, like super edgy,
Yeah. So I think you and I actually were having a similar related conversation about how popular films, there's a backlash, and then it's interesting. Yes, I agree.
Cyclical.
It's cyclical because it came out, it was a cult hit, everyone thought it was great, but then a bunch of people came back and said, actually, it's not great. It's such a
Yeah.
dumb emo movie.
Right.
But really, if you go back, I mean, I haven't watched it, but I imagine if you go back and watch it, it's and kind of removing the baggage from it right there.
Right.
I think it's probably still a really great movie.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it in prep for the show, and I haven't seen it since a very awful date in 2008.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's a great story, though. Guy comes over, he wants to meet my parents, and they're like, oh, man, I'm so glad you're dating my daughter. We've never heard of you before. And I'm like, oh, he's like my boyfriend or whatever. And so he comes in, and they're like, how about we all watch a movie together? He's like, well, I just happen to have Donnie Darko
Oh
in my car.
God, with your parents?
Blindsided. I had no idea what this movie was about. Neither did they. And he's like, it's my favorite movie.
Whoa, with
And
your parents, bro. With Alex's parents, you pick Donnie Darko?
he just happened to have the DVD of Donnie Darko in his car.
Okay.
So
So-
we watched it, and he leaves, and they're like, you can never see that boy again.
And then you broke up with him. Yeah.
Yeah, basically. I didn't ever see him again. And that's the last time I saw Donnie Darko. So now as a real ass adult, seeing it like without all that stress. Yeah, I think the film holds up. It definitely, I've heard that it in the director's cut that it kind of gets a little more, it gives you a little more closure because of it gets more into the science of how the shit works in the
think so,
world.
yeah.
And then I read an entire like website after I watched it, just like, what? How did this work?
Oh, the what's it called? Not the theory. It was like the parabola
Yes,
theory or whatever.
and like all of the weird
had a name. Like there's a whole
Tangent
chart.
universe,
Yeah,
yeah.
tangent universe stuff like that.
Yeah.
Super cool.
It's really cool. And I'm so mad that in the standard cut, none of this is talked about at all because it's very interesting.
It is really interesting. It's a bummer, but I think to be fair, I think the movie was marketed, I'd imagine, largely towards teen audiences or young adult
Sure.
audiences. And again, having not watched it in a while, did you kind of pick up on a lot of angst? For sure, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it feels more of like a young adult type of film. And interestingly, it deals with a lot of, because 2001, even though it's set in the 80s, there's a lot of, you can still pick up on a lot of modern anxieties from, 99, 2000, 2001.
Well, it's interesting.
In a movie that's set in the 80s.
It's interesting because it's right before 9/11.
Yes.
So it's one of those movies you get a glimpse of like what were people worrying about before we were worrying about terrorism. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, what were teenagers worrying about? Even though it was set in the 80s, I think it was kind of capturing
Exactly.
the anxieties of the time.
Right.
And it was very different. But I also think, again, I think this is, I would love to revisit it myself, but I think it's one of those that gets a lot of just like really juvenile backlash. It's like the cool thing to do is love it until the cool thing is to not like it.
Exactly.
And I think a Fight Club is another example.
Yeah, these kind of like-
the Dark Knight's another one, and it's like it's so cool, and then everyone's like, actually, it's not very cool, and then you're like, but if you go back and watch it, removing all the kind of like that baggage, I mean, I'm glad to hear that you thought Donnie Darko still holds up pretty well.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the idea that I think it's one of those things where it's like a flavor of like gatekeeping and hipsterism, where it's you like something until it becomes popular, and then the wrong people start liking it for the wrong reasons, and then you're like, you remember those guys in high school, they're like, oh, I love Fight Club, I just want to punch each other, instead of like a commentary on toxic masculinity
Right.
and like corporate consumerism and stuff like that, what it's actually
What's
talking
actually
about.
about.
So whenever the wrong people like the film take the wrong lessons away, have you ever wondered I got these scars, like that kind of stuff.
Or Game of Thrones right now.
Exactly.
It's like, well, people who don't really understand what really, at least for me as an individual, or you as a, maybe us as more savvy film watchers, even like in high school, like you latch onto these big ideas, you're like, oh, that's so cool. And then you talk about how great it is, and then all these other people get on board with it, and then they like it for the wrong reasons, and you're like, I mean, you guys aren't really getting it. Now I'm getting frustrated, and then baggage ensues.
and then the backlash against those type of fans, and then tiny culture wars. It's all kind of ridiculous. It's okay to like stuff that you like, and it's okay to like stuff even shallowly. It's just everyone take a second. Have peace with
like what
yourself.
you like,
what
yes,
you like.
yeah.
it's
But
okay.
I think you're right though. It is that hipster thing. You love it until it's popular, and then you're like, oh, actually, it's not that good, or you guys just don't get it. Yeah, which is totally a thing.
Bogus. Moving on to our next film, because this next thing that this next film that's going to close out our little episode of Soundtrack this week suffers from that exact problem of being so cool that everyone likes it, and then now no one can stop taking a shit on it. Here we go. Caleb, it's Harry Potter, Prisoner of Azkaban, 2004.
What else would it be? How else could we end the show with Alexandra Bohannon as the host?
Hey, it's time travel, and it's one of my favorite things ever. And it's also arguably the best film in the Harry Potter franchise. I will die by that claim.
I think there's a very good argument to be made.
Yeah.
And in fact, I probably tend to side with that. But I don't know.
You love 6 really hard.
No, not the movie. The book. 6 is my favorite book.
Favorite book.
I really like.
You like 6 movie.
I do like 6 movie, but it's definitely not the best.
Copy that.
No. It's no. I like things about 6. I defend 6, but it's not the best one.
I just
part 2 of Deathly Hallows. Actually, the whole package. I'll lump them in one. Because I actually like part 1 too.
You could do I would be interested in seeing that supercut, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Prisoner of Azkaban, directed 2004, directed by Alfonso Cuarón, scored by John Williams.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just have to say, we were so blessed to get John Williams to score the first 3 Harry Potter films. I mean, blessed. Yes. And, because this was after this one, they took a big break from it, and they had a bunch of other guys come on. I did think for the last 2, Alexander Desplat came in, and he did an amazing job.
I was very satisfied with that.
But that was because he wrote a lot of beautiful new stuff, but also came back to the original Hedwig's theme and incorporated that.
Yes.
Because for a while they ditched it, and I was like, whoa. In my mind, this is probably, Harry Potter is probably one of the, if not the, last iconic, super hummable John Williams themes.
Absolutely.
Period.
I'm still deeply offended that the score for Philosopher's Stone, Sorcerer's Stone, did not win the Oscar the year it was nominated.
Robbery.
It's a travesty, and I'm fine saying that because, again, it's one of those iconic moments in scoring. The whole franchise is set up basically by this one film. There's actually huge Wikipedia articles because I was like, you know how in the Marvel episode I was having to do a lot of research on finding the callbacks to previous films. There are Wikipedia articles where they list out all of the callbacks to, in Desplat's score, they cite John Williams's specific theme in this film here and here. Mm-hmm. So they outline all of it, which is yay, nerds. That makes me very happy.
Another thing, I'm actually really glad you opened with this particular theme, because this is a beautiful choir thing, something in Harry Potter. Again, a nice thing in Harry Potter we never knew we wanted until they put it in the movie, and you're like, whoa, this is so Harry Potter.
And one reason why Prisoner of Azkaban at the time, 10 or whatever, however old I was. Okay, I was probably older than that. It's 2004. So I was 13, 12. Okay. So I didn't appreciate this coming out because I really liked the first 2 films because they are a slavish adaptation to the source material, and that's all I wanted. I didn't want an adaptation. I just wanted people acting out a stage play of my Harry Potters, and I didn't know I wanted this. And so whenever we get a totally shift in tone. Like, this is where the series becomes its own entity as its separate franchise from the books.
Yes.
Which I think is really important. It incorporates a lot of, now we're like vaguely wizarding steampunk technologies.
Yeah, there's a lot of steampunk vibes, a lot of gothic horror vibes.
Yes.
No, you're right. This is where Harry Potter took a left turn in the direction it was going in, and for the better, because if they had done all 8 movies with Chris Columbus, or even that same idea, it would have gotten stale. 3 is also very similar, but it makes a very noticeable break in the last act from the first 2, because it actually follows a very similar template.
Absolutely. We get so much in 3, and it's interesting because for the longest time, I didn't make the full connection that Williams scored 3. I thought one of our new composers had did that to like accompany the shift
again, this
in
gets
tone.
more experimental with the
Yes.
style.
Yeah, I mean, that Double Trouble song, that was used in the trailer extensively. I remember watching the crap out of it, like over and over and over again. That was used in the trailer with the singing toads and all that stuff. That was used a lot in the marketing materials for this film, and it was so different. And like in my little book head, I'm like, oh, Harry Potter didn't have a choir. I mean, where did that come from? You know, very
Back in the early days, but yeah.
Whenever I'm just like obsessed with it, citing every single thing.
You want to see everything that you pictured in your head on the big screen exactly as you pictured it.
Exactly.
And so for someone like Alfonso Cuarón and say, hey, it'd be kind of cool to kind of support this gothic vibe we're going forward. What if we get a choir?
Yeah. What if we did something else? And I think that's one thing that's really great about Williams' scoring is he does a lot of new things. One of which is we get to the last act of the film where we get our time travel situation. We get the time turner with Hermione. If you haven't seen the film, it's also very old at this point, and also you've probably read it. You've probably seen it. I mean, if you're listening to this, you're a film nerd, probably.
Prisoner of Azkaban?
Yeah.
If you haven't, where you been?
Yeah, exactly. TLDR, Hermione and Harry are saving Sirius Black from a horrible fate, worse than death, and they have to use a time turner to rescue him from being executed. So,
that's another really important element there. This is not you don't realize this is a time travel movie until the end of the about the last act. I should say.
It really is that last little bit there, and then
and really it's a fourth act. This movie is really interesting too, in the book the same way, but from a film perspective, it's really it feels like a fourth act because you have your first 3. It's building up to this big confrontation, which would normally be like the climax, but then you realize after that you're like, oh wait, this isn't the end.
It ain't over.
It is not over, and
Right.
it takes a weird turn, which is great, and adds something special to the book and the film.
Because in the time up to when we realize it is a time travel film, we get like those little nuances of like, oh, there's someone following Hermione. There's Harry sees what he thinks is his own father casting his Patronus over the lake to drive the Dementors away. I remember reading that, and my tiny brain was like mind exploding.
Oh yeah, and I remember too. I was like, "What the fuck?
The
What's
twist,
going on?" I was like,
and
"Is
it was
Dad alive?"
actually Harry all along. So anyway, we're going to listen to one of the tracks. So the track during the time turner time travel sequence, which is called Forward to Time Past. And it is so different than a lot of the other types of things we are expecting, specifically from a John Williams score. So that's why I definitely wanted to include it, because it does good work. So here we are, John Williams, Alfonso Cuarón, and Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. So one thing that is really interesting about Forward to Time Past is so far in our show, we've had two really atypical time travel movies, one of which time travel is already passed and everything's fucked up. Two where it's like time travel but alternate dimensions and like what else is going on, crazy shit. Three is we actually have a normal kind of time travel story in which it's not a time machine. It is a time machine, but they're not hopping in it. They're putting it on.
Exactly.
And using it as a mechanic in the film to correct some horrible wrong, which is usually what people do in kind of time travel scenarios. And what's really interesting, because these first two entries in what we talk about today are kind of atypical time travel films, their scores are also extremely atypical. Now we have a more traditional time travel narrative, and bingo schwingo have ticking clocks, which I think is really interesting. No matter the tone of the film, the composer can score, like underscore, the themes in the film and how the film is kind of operating.
Right.
And what it's about. It's not just like the tone and what fits best. It's just like what kind of music summarizes like even the type of movie we're watching.
Right. No, and that's the thing about John Williams' score of Harry Potter. With each of the entries, specifically with this one though, the score is such a huge piece of the personality. Like, it's such a key identifier. And I know, of course, both of us were very young when we first saw it, so it kind of, in our brains, they kind of meld together. But it feels like so key to the identity of all three of the films he scored, but specifically with this one, with the gothic feel, with the time travel feel, all of those things kind of culminate together and really highlight specific sequences and the ideas of the film and the journey the characters are on, which is why whenever we move to the fourth one, what I would consider my lesser favorite Harry Potter films, they all feel like they're missing something, and it's because they're missing John Williams' score.
Yes, so that was our foray into time travel as interpreted by Harry Potter. We had the ticking clocks, and now we are moving on. We are about to say mischief managed to this entire episode of time travel. Before we close out the show, as always, we did time travel theme because of Planet Thunder's Shifter, their feature film. They're raising money right now. Where can they go to, Caleb?
So if you want to learn more about Shifter, which again is going to be more or less like a body horror time travel film. We'll put it that way. Think some David Cronenberg with time travel.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a low key sci-fi film, and if you enjoyed this soundtrack episode or the interview we had with Zach and Jacob today, head on over to shifterfilm.com. Give to their Indiegogo. They are raising funds through, I believe, August 18th. And they have a goal of $30,000. I think by now they're probably about halfway there. So we really need your dollar to make that happen. So if you've enjoyed time travel, you enjoy this episode or time travel in general, head on over to shifterfilm.com and consider giving your dollar. There's a lot of really cool rewards that come along with it. They got coffee mugs, they got stickers and patches, and if you give enough money, you can even sit in on a cast reading of a table read.
You could be in the fucking movie if you give enough money.
If you really want to throw your dollars at it, you can be in the movie.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we're about to head on out. Of course, you can find me at Twitter, Alex V. Bohannon. You can also find some of my work also on the Cinematropolis.com.
Hey, actually, cool, Alex. So since our last episode of Soundtrack, you did do a really great piece on Solo.
Yeah, it's been that long, huh?
I know, it goes by. It was like the beginning of June. It goes by fast. But you wrote a piece on the Solo film score.
I did. It does some really cool stuff. And the movie is not great, but the score is at least interesting. So you should definitely check that out. I've been cooking on some potential other music-related think pieces in my brain. So you can always keep tabs on what I'm writing, watching, and thinking about on those various and sundry means. What about you, Mr. Caleb?
We can always find me on Twitter also at CMastersTalk. That's letter C Masters Talk, tweeting about films, of course, video games, TV shows, all the pop culture things.
Yeah.
You can find the Cinematropolis proper at the Cinematrop on Twitter and Instagram, or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Cinematropolis.
Cool. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be seeing you next time.
I'm going to have to time travel back and listen to this whole episode and stop myself from going off on Harry Potter tangents.
Absolutely. Definitely doing that.
SEO podcast listeners, don't go away, because when we come back, I'll be reviewing Boots Riley's directorial debut, Sorry to Bother You, with Laron Chapman. Stay tuned.
Yeah, I'm out of control. I don't know where to go. You can try to keep up with me, but there ain't any hope. Who's the champion now? I'll be taking that crown. You can try to keep up with me, but I'm holding it down.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's edition of Silver Screen Soliloquies. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, the editor-in-chief and film critic for the Cinematropolis.com, and in today's episode, we'll be doing a spoiler-free review of Boots Riley's directorial debut, Sorry to Bother You, followed by a more spoiler-filled analysis in the second half of the discussion. And it's been a minute, but I am rejoined by the very one and only Laron Chapman, writer-director of You People, coming back from the film festival.
Yes, I just did another film festival in McAllister, Oklahoma, called the Glitter Film Festival, and I won Best Oklahoma Film again in Audience Choice Award. So that's 2 festivals down, and that's good news for You People.
Yes. Well, congratulations on the win. And
Thank you.
I loved seeing all of your pictures and all the goods come back. It was, it seemed like you guys had a good time.
Yeah, I don't think the people in McAllister will ever forget us. It's such a small town, so I mean, yeah, our names are written on the walls in graffiti somewhere. I promise you.
I do want to remind our listeners that if they like the things we're talking about here on the Cinematic Schematic, they can always head on over to the Cinematropolis.com or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. But I want to go ahead and get straight to the point and jump right into our review of Sorry to Bother You.
Man, I'm just out here surviving. And what I'm doing right now won't even matter.
Baby, it will always matter. Thought you said you fixed that.
Get a room! I got a room, mother...
Hey, Cash, how much longer I gotta wait for my money?
God made this land for all of us. Greedy people like you want to hog it to yourself and your family and...
Me and my family?
Yeah.
Cassius, I'm your f***ing uncle.
I just really need a job.
40 on 2.
This is telemarketing.
Stick to the script. Hey, hello.
Mr. Davison, Cassius Green here. Sorry to bother.
Let me give you a tip. You want to make some money here? Use your white voice.
My white voice.
I'm not talking about Will Smith's wife, like this young blood.
Hey, Mr. Kramer. This is Langston from Regal View.
So the synopsis by the studio, by the way, I checked it, it's Anna Perina, confirmed that this is their synopsis that is posted on IMDb. In an alternate present-day version of Oakland, telemarketer Cassius Green discovers a magical key to professional success, propelling him to a universe of greed. I wish all IMDb synopsis were this on point, because I feel like that tells a lot without spoiling the movie. Now, again, this is a film written and directed by Boots Riley, and it stars Lakeith Stanfield, Tessa Thompson, Stephen Yeun, Terry Crews, and Armie Hammer, among many others. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Did you like it? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it?
Well, there seems to be like this surge of kind of contemporary urban dramas that are like kind of depicting the Black experience in a different time period. Because now that we have voices and a lot more space to kind of explore some kind of darker themes, it seems like, you know, with Get Out a couple, you know, last year, and now this film, and then also Blind Spotting, which released this weekend here in Oklahoma City, and then also coming out soon, the Spike Lee film, Black Klansman. It just seems like we're finding really provocative and inventive ways to talk about really topical and uncomfortable subjects. And I think that Sorry to Bother You is probably the most unique of the bunch, in that it has a very surrealistic kind of cerebral take on some pretty dark themes. But so I thought it was really, really well done and very thought provoking, but kind of hard to explain after you leave, so.
Yeah, we actually caught this film together and we walked out and we said, I think our initial reaction was, I think I liked it. Like, just thinking about it, because there's a lot to take in with this movie, a lot more than I expected, even based on the trailers. Because you're right, this is a film that appeared to be a satire, which it is a satire, but there's a lot more to it than I expected. And there's a point in the film, without spoiling too many details, that it goes straight from satire to more surrealist or even science fiction.
Yeah, definitely.
Takes some left turns we weren't expecting.
That's the thing, is it feels like one type of film. And then as another layer is, there's a certain level of peculiarity about it right from the get-go, but just in terms of style and flair. But then as another layer gets peeled off, you're like, okay, you kind of just keep taking in the weirdness, and then it gets weirder, and then it gets weirder, and then you're into full-on, like, what, WTF, what's happening?
Yeah, they kind of ease you into it, but even as much as they ease you into it, there's
You're
still
not
there's a point in the movie, and you'll know it when you get there.
You're not prepared.
You're not ready for it.
And there's no way to prepare you without just ruining it for you. So
yeah, it's little seeds like the fact that they have white air quotes white person voices, which by the way I think is hilarious. Voiced by David Cross and Patton Oswalt.
That is, I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah. Those are the white voices from Lakeith Stanfield. Oh, and Danny Glover, I forgot to mention, is also in this film. And basically, the premise, and it's in the trailers. The premise is, hey, if you want to make money in this call center business, because basically Lakeith has to make money to pay back his uncle because he's about to get kicked out. Or his uncle's about to lose his house, rather, really. Which I think is also interesting within itself because it's set in an alternate Oakland, but right now, a lot of gentrification going on in Oakland, so this is a problem that a lot of people who've lived there for a long time are dealing with. But I digress. Just a nice, very subtle way to throw that into the story. But regardless, anyway, he's trying to make money to help pay for the rent. And Danny Glover essentially lays out, he's like, hey, man, if you want to make money, you gotta talk to these people like your white person voice, not your Will Smith white. I'm talking like, I don't really care. I don't really need you to buy my thing, but here's how I could think it can interest you. And I think that itself, I mean, that's the base level like satire of like, oh, here's the difference between how people perceive even the black voice,
which is a very interesting metaphor for just the double consciousness and also the kind of the cultural code switching that you have to do in social settings to kind of assimilate into the larger culture. I could relate to that personally, so I thought it was interesting how they were doing it for comedic effect. Like, you literally will be more profitable if you take away your natural voice and obviously project a different person. So I thought that was a really fascinating kind of point to bring up.
Yeah, and actually I'm glad you mentioned that because I do think the film does a great job at showing identity being a big theme. Because what is your identity? Is it your race? Is it your social class? Is it your job? Is it who you date?
Yeah.
Is it your success?
Right.
What is identity? Because I feel like Lakeith Stanfield's Cassius throughout the film is struggling with his own sense of self because he starts off trying to make money to pay the bills, and then at a certain point decides he wants to help his friends at the call center who want to go on strike to make more money. But as the film progresses, he's presented with opportunities so that he doesn't have to worry about that as much.
Yeah.
And I think that it deals with, he has to put on the white voice. There's his coworker once he moves up in the call center who says, only talk to me in your white voice.
Right.
And it's very strange because then all of that, his salesmanship and this alter ego that he has developed for his job is a part of who he is as the film develops, and then that's a big tension later on in the film. So I think it's a really interesting idea that explores, again, Lakeith Stanfield did a great job exemplifying this struggle because at the end of the day, like if you can be successful and make lots of money, why wouldn't you? And that's kind of what society has trained us to think. And his character is there too until he actually becomes really successful, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, how much do I believe in that other stuff? Is it what's more important, the money or the things I used to believe in or I do believe in?
Mm-hmm. And all those things it's weird because as a question, all those things for everyone else is just like, what's your identity? It is all those things. It's your identity at work, your identity around your friends. But for minority, sometimes the prominent thing is, of course, just that minority. And so for us, it's more so like emulating, those other facets of us. So that, what is so obvious to the naked eye isn't what you see as ass, so that was an interesting thing that they had to kind of, digress into, but yeah.
Yeah, again, lots of nuance there.
Yeah.
I think this film does a really great job at that. Now, the movie, it touches on so many different ideas. It almost could be perceived as too much, and I think it will be too much for a lot of folks. Laron, did you think this movie was too much? But there's a lot of big ideas between the struggles of the working class, race and politics, critiquing workers' rights marches and corporations. Like, there's a lot that's packed into this movie. Did you think it was too much?
Well, I think if you're thinking of it very as a literal, then yes, I think. But if since we did say obviously it's a very surrealistic take on all these issues, so it works in that context. I think once you realize just how far they're going to go with all of this, with the weirdness, with the oddness of it, it kind of just becomes a canvas, kind of a very layered canvas about all these issues. And I think it works very effectively that way. I think if they had tried to play this as a straight drama and maybe just said take out maybe the third act of weirdness, then it probably would have felt very heavy-handed. But I think as it exists now, it's just really provocative and thoughtful, and inventive. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and that's one of the ways I think the film uses satire as a real tool to relay its points. It's similar to another movie you mentioned, Blind Spotting, we were talking about before we hopped on the mics, and another movie that does uses some non-traditional techniques to deliver what could be heavy-handed dialogue as not like it connects better. And I think you're right. Whenever you make it satire, when you make it a little more surreal, you make it a little larger than life. Some of the things they're showing visually or the scenarios they're placing our character in that would probably never actually happen in a drama, but because they're in this movie, it works.
It's kind of like if Terry Gilliam had directed, like, I don't want to say Boys in the Hood because that's typical, but some insert popular urban genre here.
Oh, that's a great point. This is a lot like a Terry Gilliam film. I didn't even consider that.
It has a very, there's some horror elements to it. Obviously it's comedic, but it's also very dark too. So it's uncomfortable there, particularly towards the end. So and it's almost like they were mincing out a little bit of dread, throughout the whole time. And then at some point you're just all the way in it. And now that by that point though, you're pretty well seduced. You can't really take your eyes off of it. Even if you're not enjoying it or uncomfortable, you can't. It's like a train wreck. You can't stop looking at it. So, and I think that's why at the end of it, we couldn't really articulate how we felt about it because there were a lot of ideas thrown at us. But as it kind of sits, you think this is kind of brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the nice thing about it. I'm not 100% sure how well all these things work as I've been thinking about it, but I can tell you this. I admire it for being very ambitious.
Yeah.
I admire it for trying to express some really big ideas, very important and relevant ideas in a way differently than I think the other examples you mentioned, even Get Out and even Moonlight or Blind Spotting. It's doing its own thing. Right. And I respect it for that. And I like it because, quite frankly, overall this year, there are definitely the standout films, but overall I feel like I'm watching the same movie quite a bit, and this feels so unique and fresh.
And honestly, all the themes that are in the film are not new. They're not new things that haven't been explored in other movies, but they haven't been explored this way, and that's why it feels fresh and interesting. And so I think that they've found, again, a very unique way to basically talk about really concrete themes in abstract ways, and it cause a little bit more active viewership from the audience, but it makes for something really original. So,
and it's definitely, there's no way you walk out of this theater without I mean, you might be angry, but maybe you'll be thinking about the film. I mean, there's no way you leave this film not thinking about it. It gives you something to take away with. Yeah. And, hopefully it's productive thinking, not angry thinking. But, I do think, there's a lot to digest here. And I think ultimately how complex and kind of out of the box its presentation of its ideas, I think everyone's going to walk away with something to think about for the days and weeks after the theater. I know I've still been thinking about it. It was 2 weeks ago I think we saw it.
Yeah.
Well, so we'll go ahead and get to the really good juicy stuff and the spoilers. Before we make a recommendation, Laron, is there anything else you want to highlight about the film, spoiler free?
I mean, between this film and Blind Spotting, what's kind of interesting is that both of them, are kind of talking about this kind of deep divide between white culture, the dominant white culture, and then minority culture. But what's interesting in both of these films is what's kind of deepening that divide is the green, essentially money, and how that kind of is always the root of it, always the root of the issue. People living in poverty-stricken areas who have, are not subject to having all of the resources and all the, the availabilities to them. So it's interesting how in both of these films, race obviously is a component of it, but it's more used as fuel for the larger machine that is capitalism, and so I think that more specifically here in this film, obviously because they are dealing with corporations, but both films kind of touch on it in that way. So I think it's just a really interesting way to kind of to see how these issues kind of continue to perpetuate, because sometimes race is a component, and obviously we can cry racism every single time, and it is definitely there, but there's also kind of a monetary incentive to keep doing these things, because if you make workhorses out of these people, then this continues to happen. So and so long as it's profitable, then that's how capitalism works. It doesn't care about individual lives, and so race just happens to be one of those things that kind of helps fuel all of that. So,
well, and the way that oftentimes capitalism is exploited to keep people of color and certain groups or even gender kind of pigeonholed and below the line outside of the dominant white culture. It is there is a big power struggle, and I think the film touches on that for certain. But I think I agree. I really appreciate how it does show a very clear connection. At the end of the day, I think it's more critical. It is being more critical of greed, corporations, and capitalism than it is about race. However, we see directly how
race affects it.
Race affects it, and how those things affect race too.
Yeah,
and it gets very specific down to the experiences. And I've one scene in particular we'll talk about in spoilers that I just was like, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I know I'm the white guy in the theater right now, but I'm uncomfortable. I see, you're able to experience this, and it's we'll talk about it. There's a lot. I think there's a handful of scenes like that. Right. So one thing I want to touch on too is I did at one point work in a call center, and it's not very often I see films ever portray call centers for more than like 2 seconds. They actually show call center life, and spot on.
I remember you said that, and what was interesting is I read that he actually worked in a call center before he was, so that actually probably touches on why he understood that. The scene in particular when the woman is talking about her husband's dying of cancer or has died of cancer, and you're supposed to stick to the script, as they say.
Stick to the script. But
you're supposed to remove all emotions, even though deep down that what you're doing is essentially ripping them off. So it's interesting that they touch on that, and you have to again with the code switching, it's like not just just code switching culturally, but also on a humane level. Like, this is my job, this is what I do. So I thought it touched on that too, how that kind of becomes a part of it, the greed aspect of it. But
and again, you're looking at, because we see later how much the people who are higher up the food chain make, how much money, the ridiculous parties that they're the money they're making, and then we see that after we've seen, hey, here's all these workers who are making pennies who are having to go on strike because
everything's a selling point. Oh, your husband has cancer. Well, you know what? We have something that can, what I'm saying? It's like exploiting those things in that way. So they touch on that.
And that was hard. That was hard because I definitely did have experiences where you get those calls like, oh, well, this person just died, or but it's
do I acknowledge this? Or?
Yeah, do you just roll with it? Do you get dinged? Because it affects your scorecard. And a lot of this call centers, like it doesn't. Sometimes the circumstances don't matter. They'll come back and say, "Hey, well, you could have done the script this way." But I'm like, yeah, but people, and again, the script is more important than the humanity.
Yeah.
That's a sidebar. I appreciated that. It's a small detail that I personally appreciated because most films don't take the time to showcase what that workplace looks like, what that culture looks like. And there are quite a few people who still work in call centers. A lot of it's being automated these days, but there's still a lot of people. I mean, we have call centers, a lot of them in Oklahoma, actually. So it is a very real type of office that a lot of people still work in, and most filmmakers, I mean, even films like Office Space aren't dealing with call centers; they're dealing with more office styles. So it's a little different. So I appreciate that. I have to give a shout out to all the performances; they were all really exceptional. I
mean, Lakeith, obviously, who also was in Get Out, had a good kind of minor role in that. Was really great in the lead here.
And Tessa Thompson, I'll never say anything bad about her. She's always great. I found her. There's a scene where she is at an art exhibit that I found to be especially hard to watch. Yeah, and we might talk a bit about that too. But she plays an interesting role, which is quite a bit different than Annihilation or Westworld or other things we've seen her in this year. Yeah. I also really think Armie Hammer does a great job. Oh, yeah. He is more charismatic than I've seen him in a while, going for like a charismatic CEO type, vaguely like an Elon Musk type character, a little bit there. Laron, do you recommend this film? If so, how do you recommend people see this?
This is a film you're going to have feelings about after you watch it. Intensely one way or the other. So I would say it probably would play well at home just as much as the theater, because there's nothing specifically, there's nothing about it. Cinematically, it's well done, but it's not something that has to be seen in a big, sound quality and thing like that. So it's something that's more thoughtful than anything else. So I would say if it's your type of film, go see it. If you're into things, challenging yourself mentally when you see something, because you're not going to be able to sit here comfortably and just watch it. It's not an easy film. Then definitely go see it. But definitely, I'd say at the very least, rent it.
Okay, yeah, I think I'd second that as well. I really think this is a solid matinee if you're looking for something that's a little more outside of your normal summer film fare. It's not something that has to be seen like some premium theater-going experience, although I do want to encourage you to give it money if you can, because I want more movies like this. So I recommend the matinee. I think it's great. I think you'll walk away with a lot of thoughts and feelings about things and ideas to chew on. And I think you're going to be shocked by what you see, no matter. And I just can't express, because the movie just takes turns you're not expecting. Yeah. And for that, and I don't know how that heel turn, I'm not sure if that works fully, but man, I love it because it's so bonkers.
It gets a reaction.
Yeah. So I do so far. I mean, if I'm looking at this year, I'd say it probably falls in my top 10 of the year so far somewhere. I haven't ranked it, but I know I feel strongly enough about this film that it's really unique. Yeah. And even though I think there might be some problems with that last act where it risks jumping shark,
going off the
rails a little too much, I don't think it does, but it gets real close.
Yeah. It's never boring. It's never not interesting.
Exactly.
And that's the best part of it.
For me, the almost going off rails is worth it because I saw something unlike anything I've seen, or at least unlike I've seen recently. So, all right. So those are our recommendations. We're going to go ahead and jump into a little bit of a spoiler-filled analysis. So if you don't want to know, talk about all the weird, crazy stuff that happens in this movie. Get out.
See what I did there?
Here's the starting salary.
Well, man, I'm going to have to get me some new suits.
Whatever I wear, no, I'm here to be clear.
Laron.
Yes. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so firstly, the scene I was referencing that was gross, the most uncomfortable to me was when Lakeith goes to this party and they force him to rap.
Oh,
and I just firstly, it was very evident to me. It took me about a minute or so at the party. Then I realized, oh wait, he's the only person of color here. Him and his boss.
Yeah.
Everyone else was white, which is a huge comparison or a huge opposite to the call center where it's everyone's a person of color.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Except,
Yeah,
well, I mean,
that's a good
most
point. Yeah,
everyone.
you're right. No, I just didn't realize that. Yeah,
It was something I picked up on, like just drawing the differences. I was like, oh, subtle thing. The movie never stops and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm the only black guy here,"
Right.
or vice versa. There's never any of that. It's a very nice subtle
feel
thing.
it. You feel it.
Oh, you feel it. And that scene where he gets up and he tries to rap and he's bombing it, and then all of a sudden he starts.
Yeah, because he's because Armie Hammer is like, it's like, hey, you want do a rap for us? And he's like, I actually don't do that, man. It's like, no, but of course you do. Of course you do. You have to.
You're black.
You're
right?
black.
You know how to rap.
You have to rap. Yeah, exactly. So, and he's like, no, I really don't. And then obviously he's pressured to the point where they start club music starts playing and he just starts saying a racial slur, the N-word, over and over and over again with really no lyrics. That is the word he's repeating over and over again with a beat, and next thing you know, everyone in the room that's not black starts, saying the same word in a very, I don't know. It's just, it's a perfect example of like one of those situations where like you make an assumption about somebody and you feel pressured to accommodate those people because they're essentially now your colleagues and also the reason why you have a job. So he's pressured to kind of put himself in a vulnerable place and do something that doesn't come naturally for him. So I thought that was really a really powerful scene. But
Well, and I think it's just kind of hitting on how white culture is appropriating and celebrating aspects of black culture without actually understanding the cultural
compartmentalizing it.
Yeah,
as though it's something that you can wear or see, or like it's like a tangible thing that we possess. That it's not. It's as though people aren't just people. That if you are black, you're programmed with a certain set of settings. You know what I mean? That you can just whip out at any opportune moment, and people don't work that way. But it's interesting how they paint that picture.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree, and that's one of many ways the film I think does a great job at presenting race as a huge factor in this character's life and the story without it actually being the point of the story, right. Which gets us to the weird stuff because that's the beginning of the weird stuff. Once they get to the party, you can do this whole thing. Exactly. That's normal weird stuff. And then we see him sit down. Okay, so Armie Hammer takes him to this room and they sit down and describe what his plan is, and it's got a puppet that's narrating.
Yes.
And
yeah,
it gets real weird. So basically, he's gonna have they're gonna have all their employees snort this cocaine that turns them into horse people.
You heard that?
Yes,
horse people.
Horse people. Yes. That is correct. By snorting cocaine of some sort.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's obviously a literal translation of like workhorses, but I mean it's there visually too. And the first time we lay eyes on one of these horse people who have snorted this substance, it is jarring because they're fully nude first of all, and they still have their human voices, and they're able to speak through it. But the imagery is something just so shocking and disturbing.
Well, and the way they reveal it too, it basically is going to the bathroom and you hear the voice saying, "Help me, help me," and then he opens it up and it's horse person. You're like, "Whoa!"
Falls out onto the ground and you're like, "WTF? Like, what did we just see?"
What is going on? Like, I actually thought he was dreaming. I really thought he had because he snorted the cocaine right before he went in there,
right?
And I thought, well,
had you watched the video at that point? Because then he's like, "No, you're going to watch this video and it's going to make sense. It's going to make sense of everything."
He like took a bathroom break.
Yeah.
It got weird. I can't remember at what point there was a break. There was a break where he goes to the bathroom. Yeah. And he finds the horse person, comes back, and Armie Hammer says, you weren't supposed to see that yet. You're supposed to finish the video. It all makes sense.
Right.
While Armie Hammer's flaunting a gun in his face, by the way.
Right. So, yeah, definitely not by choice. So, but yeah, it just, at that point, that is the point where you realize that we have gone all the way. We've thrown the kitchen sink out. This is where this film is going. It's not just going to be, thought-provoking on a cerebral level. It's also going to be, disturbing to the eye. So
it's super disturbing to the eye. It becomes more visceral instantly, and just something so darkly sinister about an evil corporation, using its resources to poison their employees in order to get more to dehumanize them, because at the end of the day, it's all about productivity. They don't really care about the human element there. They just want them to
because the whole idea for them to be turned to these horse people, it's not just because it's weird and cool, but it's also because they're saying you're going to be stronger, you're not going to get as tired, you're going to be able to get a lot more done, in a day's work than you would if you were a human.
Right.
So
and you get a horse dick.
And you get a horse.
That was actually a selling point in the movie. He says
you get a horse stick. Yeah. So there's that.
That was the selling point.
That was the perk.
That's very sinister. And then the second layer of sinister, because that's a sinister plan in general, because you're manipulating people into buying into something they don't understand the consequences of. And I think the idea was they were going to flood the streets with it too. Anyway, twisted, because I believe that could happen. I mean, without the horse people piece, the idea of wealthy groups flooding the streets with drugs in order to keep them
fair,
addicted
and if it
to
works,
the
and the thing is about it is, it doesn't matter how many individual lives it affects. It's like, if it works and it is more productive, then corporations will seize an opportunity to utilize.
They'll celebrate it. Their stocks will go up, right? Yeah,
exactly. So, and what's interesting is simultaneously while all this is happening, there's all of these images of protest throughout the entire film. They've been protesting this for the longest time, because before we knew what Armie Hammer and this corporation, Worry Free Incorporated, was doing, behind the closed doors, we like the audience, as the audience, has just been kind of fed, the Kool-Aid, like as though that this was a great thing that they were doing, and that, hey, to get to this space is good because you're going to be lucrative, and but then you get there and you realize it comes with a price, as does anything with money and capitalism.
And the second layer of sinister that I really find about this whole plan is, so you're doing that terrible thing, but he's already, Armie Hammer and Worry Free are already thinking about the next thing. Oh, well, eventually these people are going to figure out that they have been conned and they're going to try to revolt. So we need to create some sort of Martin Luther King-esque leader who works for us. So he's only like faux looting them only in the ways that we would want them to.
Yeah.
It's very sinister.
Yeah, it's very dark. It's very dark.
From people of power thinking, like, that's how far ahead they're thinking. Hey, we're going to take these people's humanity away from them, make them more productive so we can make more money off the things they make. Once they realize that they're getting the short end of the stick, we're going to present to them a leader who's going to help us still control them, even though they don't realize we're controlling them.
And the thing about it that makes it dark is it is the cynicism, because there's no, even like mobility comes with, the sacrifice again of the soul, but then to not do it is to sit there and struggle your whole life. You know what I mean? On the bottom level there, where he was originally, with everyone else just trying to make ends meet. So it's this kind of weird parallel, to the world we're living in right now, and how, they say the economy is good, but I don't know for whom. I think they're saying it. It's great that they're saying it, but the people I know, it's not. It hasn't been great for them.
The stock market's doing great. We'll put it that way. I don't know. I don't know if the economy is doing good. The stock market's doing great, though.
Yeah, there we go. But there's some parallels there, obviously, to right now. I don't know if that was intentional or if it's just kind of one of those things.
I read he published this in a magazine back in 2014, I think. Yeah. 2015. It's been a couple of years. Like it's something that's been published for a while, which I think goes to show that while this type of thing is definitely in the conversation now, it's been a problem for longer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's the spotlight's a little more on it, and a little more everyone's talking about these things that have kind of come to the surface in the last couple of years. But I think it goes to show you, even like, say, in the Obama era, like, this was still a thing. This was still a problem that has only been amplified, I think, in the last couple of years.
I agree. Yeah.
So testament to Boots Riley's script for that.
This is not the kind of thought-provoking work you would think would come out of that. I guess I'm not as familiar with his work, but for a directorial debut, this is a very,
Oh, this is crazy. Yeah, a directorial debut. There is so much confidence in this film. Borderline overconfidence, because it does. Like, when the horse people show up, you're just like, whoa, we just crossed over from satire into something much, again, sci-fi or something a little more surreal.
Yeah, I would love to sit down and at least, either I interview him or at least hear him answer all of my questions.
Yes.
So, because it goes places that, that you cannot predict, and while using issues that have that are prevalent right now, and have always been. So it's interesting how he freshened, an age-old argument and gave us a new way to talk about it. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so after the weird twist happens, I really thought that this movie was going the way of, because we see Lakeith Stanfield go and then blow the whistle on Worry Free. But then all the things he does, at least upon my initial reading, and I've had some time to reflect on it, but all the things that I saw him doing actually rallied a lot of support from the protesters. So I thought that he had actually taken the deal, but we didn't see it on the screen, and he was inadvertently working for it, because the idea of he was building up he built like a resistance on his side, and was controlling the people, and it didn't end up taking that way, and that would have been the ultimate cynical ending. The ultimate cynical ending is that actually Worry Free, ended up being on Worry Free's payroll. And the film doesn't do that. It shows that he actually does show a revolt, although the ending doesn't make as much sense, because we see him snort that coke early in the movie, and Armie Hammer assures him, no, what are you talking about? No, that was not the substance you saw in the video. You're good. I wouldn't do that to you.
Right.
Without you knowing about it. What kind of person do you think I am?
Exactly. Yeah.
But then at the end of the movie, we see he's got the horse snout, and that's cut to credits, and I don't really know what to make of that. It's such a weird, shocking ending.
I think the cycle just keeps going, because obviously he did it against his will, because if he was able to choose, he probably would have said no. So it's a wonder if anyone that got up there decided they wanted to do that. You know what I mean? So, it is a jarring ending. I don't know if it's happy or hopeful, because was there an antidote? I thought maybe there was an antidote.
Did they say there was? Yeah, there was an antidote, because there was going to be a way to turn him back after it was like a 5-year contract or something like that, 10-year contract.
Right.
Well, horse people.
Not every day that you see that.
I know, and it's certainly not expect. I mean, I thought the puppet in the video was kind of very strange, but then it only got much, much stranger. Well, Laron, before we wrap up our spoiler discussion here, is there anything else you would like to add about Sorry to Bother You?
Let it bother you. See it and let it bother you.
Yeah, I concur. Wrestle with the movie. And if it upsets you, I would challenge you to think about why it upsets you, and maybe do a little bit more reading on some of the ideas and themes we've talked about today. Not everyone is inclined to, especially in today's culture, where whenever we feel like someone's stepping on our toes, we dig our heels in even more. But I would encourage people to at least kind of consider and read into what it is. I don't know about you or Laron. When something bothers me, I sit around for days thinking about.
Yeah, you want it to become intelligible to yourself, because I think what it is you might be just a little whiplash after you leave the theater. And so I think the only way to remedy that is to educate yourself on what that was, So I think you're right. I think after you watch it, I was compelled to read reviews and hear. I need every piece of information I can get about this, because what are people saying about it? What does it all mean? And why did we go here?
Yeah, let the movie bother you, wrestle with it a little bit, and hopefully we'll still be talking about why it bothers us come December next year, or even March, maybe. Who knows? All right, well, everyone, I do want to remind you this is a podcast for the Cinematropolis.com, and you can find more of our work on our social media channels at the Cinematrop on Twitter and Instagram, or on Facebook at facebook.com/the Cinematropolis. Laron Chapman, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Facebook under my name, Laron Chapman, or you can follow my film at facebook.com/youpeoplemovie. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram under the film's name as well.
And You People, great companion piece with Sorry to Bother You. Yeah. Just saying.
Topical things going on with race in the world right now.
So if you haven't seen You People, I highly recommend you check out those social media channels. That way you can find out where it's playing next. You can always find me on Twitter, tweeting about all sorts of things, films, television, pop culture, the death of Movie Pass, at C Masters Talk. That's the letter C, Masters Talk. Rest in peace, Movie Pass. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the Cinematropolis.com. If you enjoyed the show, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review and a rating to help us get discovered by more listeners. Also, make sure to tell your friends about the show and share our post on social media. This has been a Planet Thunder Productions co-production. The Cinematic Schematic score was produced by Vinnie Hogan, and the program was hosted and produced by Caleb Masters. Silver Screen Soliloquies was co-hosted by Laron Chapman. Soundtrack was hosted by Alexandra Bohannon with selections from the 1968 Planet of the Apes, Donnie Darko, and Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. We'll see you all again next month when we take a look at films that examine the ideas of new and fresh beginnings.